actually present here now. And so that made sense to me. Now that's a refuge, yeah. So if I take refuge in awareness, where does that lead me to? Well, that awareness becomes more profound, more constant, and I say, well, that's really reliable. Awareness is really reliable. Emotions are not reliable. Relationships, this body, they're not really reliable. And so begin to really trust in what that actually means as an existential, experiential thing rather than as a dogma. Because it's not about like believing even that the Buddha existed. You could say to me, fake news, it's just like, no one really made it on the moon, and the Buddha never existed. and whatever, it's a conspiracy theory, and that wouldn't really bother me. I'm not bothered if you don't believe it. Awareness is awareness. So it's not a kind of, for me, a belief thing. It's a trust thing. Oh yeah, I could trust that. And then the Dharma. So the Dharma is formulated in two ways. One is doctrine, Four Noble Truths, which I've been using those structures. Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta, dependent origination, the factors of enlightenment, the fetters, the Sila, Samadhi, Panya. We have all these different formulations of the doctrine and the teaching. But then when you look at the words, Santitiko, Kaliko, Ehipasiko, Opanayiko, Pachatang, Veditabo, Vinyahe, here now, not a matter of time, to be realized each individually for themselves. Pachatang, now. And Lompocha would say that. So what is here now, not a matter of time? Well, doctrine is kind of, it's constructed. It's a matter of time. Sometimes I remember it, sometimes I don't. But what is the doctrine pointing to? And then through my teachers, Lompocha would say Penyang Nieng. It's like this, same as Lompocha Sumedho is saying now. And it's, oh yeah, Dharma is reality. But it's not the reality of my constructed interpretation of reality. That's a Thai Buddha, those are violets, that's a tile floor, that's the south, that's the constructed bit. But just this moment, just as it is, as Dharma, it's like this, that's Dharma. And that I can take refuge in. Now, it's a strange way to talk about it, but that I can trust, that life is like this. Now, it seems like a tautology. How else could it be? Life can, it's not, but do I ever bring my mind to Dharma? Or does my mind dwell on commentary, analysis, past, future, here and now, not a matter of time, presence? And so this combination of Buddha knowing Dharma is actually very, very powerful for me now. It took a while, but yeah, Buddha awake, knowing. And what? Life is like this. And when I trust those two things, then if there's some, scattering of the mind or, whatever inputs come from the sense experience, some old history of resentment or some anxiety that has, just has some energy, then what's refuge? Well, I'm not going to take refuge in the fear or in thought. I'll take refuge in Buddha knowing Dharma. It's like this, and it feels like this. It's fear's just like this. I don't even call it fear. It's just like this. And that is very liberating because I don't have to fix it. I don't have to reorganize it or analyze it, but it's just, I can do something if it's necessary. If the fear comes up and the bear's coming through the window, yeah, I get out the door, sure. It's not that I'm some kind of passive whatever. But if you see what I mean, that when we experience dukkha, suffering, and then we have, where do we go? Do we go to, analyzing it and trying to figure it out? I say, no, disappointment feels this way. This is the Dharma of disappointment. It's just like this. Buddha knowing Dharma is a refuge. And why it's a refuge is it's not only resolving or helping you to resolve the problematic part of our life, it is always the opening to the unconditioned, which is not dependent. It's not dependent to originate. So it's the unconditioned, uncreated, unoriginate, unformed is kind of revealed through refuge in Buddha Dharma. Refuge in Sangha, to me, and different monks will probably talk about it, that's the social aspect of my life. Now, okay, Sangha can be used in many ways. So sometimes the Sangha is the group of practitioners you might be with. But I can't take refuge with a group of practitioners I'm with, because sometimes I don't like them. I don't know about you, I'm sure you never have that, but occasionally for me. And then they go do things like they die. I mean, what's that about? I think it's sick. But so you can see any person can't be a refuge because any social situation is constructed. It's not reliable. It's anicca dukkha anatta, right? So then what is Sangha really, what is that? Well, for me, it seems to be the way I live my life, the moral principles of my life, the expression of my life as much as possible through generosity and compassion, the boundaries that help me from being, doing stupid things on right speech, right action, and so on. Right livelihood. As a monk, I have very good livelihood in that sense. And those are protections. So sometimes, maybe I want to say something really dumb, and sometimes I say it, but oftentimes I don't, because I'm protected and guided by refuge and Sangha. Refuge in my, say, in the Vinaya, the protocols and structures of monastic rule, just my own innate sense of humanness and what's right and fair and so on and so forth. So for Sangha, for like lay people, it would be, what are your values? And what are the kalyanamitta or spiritual friendships which encourage those values? So I live in a monastery, and there are other monastics and guests who understand our monastic conventions, and we help each other live by those values and reflect back to each other. No, we live by these values, not values which are worldly values, say. And then Sangha, you can see, because it's my refuge in the way I live, I seek others out who live in that way. And that's the idea of kalyanamitta, spiritual friendship. Other beings who will raise my game, or I'll help to raise their game, as we say, because I know if I start to, do something foolish, I say, wait, no, that's not what we do. We don't go that direction, we go this other direction. And that's the beauty of Sangha as a social institution. But I think it has to be founded on an inner, obviously an inner value system, and then the outward takes place, because that's where our friendships are created, because we have those inner values. So Buddha Dhamma Sangha, our monastery is called Tisarana. Sarana is refuge. So Ti is the tri would be in Sanskrit, three in Pali, Tisarana. And I named it that because I think those are such interesting ways of looking at being a Buddhist, because they're not doctrinal, right? They're not like you take refuge and not, you don't have to be a Buddhist per se, card-carrying Buddhist, because they're deeper than doctrine. They're about our humanity, and they are refuges, because they are the ways that we can talk about this difficult language of the unconditioned, the uncreated, and the unformed. So they are, as I live this life, they've become more and more profound for me. Okay.
Thank you, Wangpo. A second question sent. Why is it important to live by the 5 precepts? Thank you.
Well, it's important to live a life that is meaningful as much as possible. And a life which has meaning is a life which is not selfish. A life which is like totally selfish is not really meaningful, because the self-consuming nature of ego leads to results which are not freeing. Whereas a life lived in relationship to other things and other beings is a more reflective life. So if I want to harm something, like if I want to harm a mosquito, and I often want to harm mosquitoes, I confess. I have a rule which says any sentient being I should not kill. Now that rule awakens me to the impulse to want to kill. So my relationship with this little sentient thing and my love of a moral life, in the way that maybe the Buddha portrayed it, there are many ways to portray a moral life, gives me a sense of being bigger than the selfish impulse to kill the mosquito. And if you take it on a grander scale than that, my relationship with people then is influenced, moderated, enhanced by the moral values I keep with them. So if my speech is, say, manipulative, I'm manipulating someone because I want something or whatever, and I lie and manipulate them, I might get what I want, but that infects me with more fear and more selfishness. And later on, I don't really have many friends, or I don't really feel well about myself. The results are very, very poor. My heart is not happy. So keeping the precepts, it's not about good and evil. Those are sometimes we get the models we get from European culture, like there's good and there's evil. We talk more about the skill and unskill, skillful things and unskillful things. And the more I can do compassionate things, and the less I do hurtful things, the more the heart is happy, enhanced, radiant, confident. And that all of that is a foundation for realizing the unconditioned. Because if my heart is not happy, or at least my heart is not filled with remorse and regret, which happens when people don't live a good moral life, then that unhappiness it's really hard to meditate. I need to distract, because my heart is so contracted by all these memories or negative things that have been done. So the foundation, like I often tell that story, the first time I heard His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he was speaking in New Zealand way back, and he was in his talk, he said, compassion is the method. And I said, of course, it's not the goal, it's the method. And that was quite significant for me. I could say, yeah, if my life is lived in a sense of goodness and caring and consideration of others, then that will be a foundation for happiness and well-being. And then from that foundation, deeper spiritual considerations can take place, because the heart doesn't need anything. There is, I don't need an external object to get away from the horribleness of things I've done to other people, or the confusion I have from maybe drinking too much alcohol, or the confusion I have from being insincere and lying and cheating and so on and so forth. Right? So it becomes, and if you read like if you go Ajahn Chah or Sri Ramana or anyone, you read their work, like they would find it harder to kill than to be killed. Chah, he says, I couldn't kill a mosquito. It's impossible. Couldn't do it. And you think, what's the level of compassion that a man can have that he can't do that? It's amazing. And it is inspiring. I had a really neat experience here some years ago where a couple of the builders, they had got to know our ways about killing mosquitoes and so on. And they were nice guys. And they were into doing that. But once I was talking with them, and we were talking about something in the workshop, and a mosquito bit one of them, and he went like that. And then he looked at me, he said, "Oh, you guys don't do that, do you?" So it was nice. I got a little doubt in his mind. But, you can see what it did. It gave pause, to that impulse just to kill. All of a sudden there's a pause. And there's an awakeness. Is this skillful or is this unskillful? So a Buddhist lifestyle without morality wouldn't be a Buddhist lifestyle. You wouldn't have it. And some of the modern teachings on mindfulness and so on, I guess they just assume that people are living more lives. But it's so fundamental to the Buddhist path. All right?
Thank you, Luangpur. One more question from chat. What do you mean when you say that the brahmaviahras are mature emotions? Thank you.
I guess I would say that so brahmaviahras, what does it mean? Brahma means godlike, vihara is place. And I just from my own experience, as I've resolved more and more the fears and angers and jealousies of my own heart, what is revealed is that when the heart is not consumed with egotism, there's a natural response to life, which is based on the brahmaviahras. The natural response to someone, if someone really hurt themselves, and I saw that, I would stop this meeting, run out there and help them. That would be my natural response. Or if I see someone really successful and happy, the natural response is, "Oh, good on you. You've done that really well. Nice one." Or the response of non-harming myself or others. And then the response from the upekkha, from the equanimity is, yeah, life is this way. There is disappointment. There is foolishness. Yeah, life is that way. The planet is that way. The kind of peacefulness of upekkha. So it seems to me that we are beings who have a heart. And as we activate awareness of that, when we get, below this part, down below the neck, we have also life down here. And there's lots of information here, and also in our bellies and our bodies. We release a lot of the fears and angers and so on from the energy system. Then the energy system is still there, but now it is no longer bound by selfishness and self-concern and narcissism and all those kinds of things. And then because it's available, right? It responds through brahmaviahras. How else would you respond? Oh, you broke your leg. Too bad. I'm going to go watch TV. You wouldn't do that. No one would do that. So the brahmaviharas seem to me the emotional nature of liberation. We talk about liberation as such an abstract word, or moksha, or freedom. But I'm a human being. What's the blood and guts experience of that? And certainly from being with Lompa Cha or Lompa Samedo or Lompa Liam, these great teachers which I have had, their sense of centeredness and stillness and silence and compassionate response to the world is profound. They're very, very profound. But it's not premeditated. They're not sitting there doing brahmaviharas practices. They don't have any interference. So it's just natural response. It's not self. If you look at it that way, they're not doing it. It's doing it because the heart is free to respond in that way. Okay?
Thank you, Luangpur. So another question from chat. What does the Buddha mean by not self? How can we experience this? Thank you.
It's really the nub well, very central to the teaching. Okay, so first of all, the Buddha doesn't say there's no self. He says that which has, well, I don't know what he says, but this is what the texts say. I wasn't around. Anyway, I gotta be careful. Anyway, from what I've heard, that which has a nature to arise has a nature to cease. Okay, that we can see. So the sunset, the sun rises, passes through the heavens, and then it sets. So daylight arises and ceases. And because it is dependent on all kinds of other things, you can't say it's a fixed entity. Daylight's not a fixed entity. It's not a thing. It's a part of a process. My emotions. Whose emotions are they? Are they my emotions? Okay. Well, one way you can look at it, if they're your emotions, don't have them. Or if they're your emotions and you own them, then you wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be happy at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Don't put any money on it because you don't know. Because the emotional world is constructed, it's conditioned. Now, it does seem like they're my emotions. And that's the problem, right? I mean, they're not your emotions, right? My arthritic knee is not your arthritic shoulder. We can both agree that the body has pain, but there is individuality. And so we tend to identify with individuality as who we are, my body, my emotions, my history. But that very sense of this is my body and that is a perception in awareness. And this is the really hard part of Buddhism, is to see that perception of me and mine is an object in awareness. And that when you focus back on awareness, when mind knows mind, you won't find any fixed person. You'll find awareness. Now it's probably closer to say that your real home is awareness rather than your emotions. But when you try to find a self in awareness, you won't. You just find silence. That's the limit of your capacity to pay attention. You can't get behind that or bigger than that. So the language around not self is simply that all experience is anicca dukkha anatta. It's anicca because it begins and ends, all sense experience. It's dukkha because it's not the unconditioned. It's unsatisfactory, not that it's bad, it's just don't look there for fulfillment on the spiritual realm. Look there for comfort or that kind of happiness. So it's dukkha in that sense. And then it's anatta, that it's a part of nature. It's just a part of the conditioned nature of phenomena. So people will say, well, what about individuality? Well, our answer tends to be, well, it's dependently originated. That's our answer to self. Well, what is it? It's dependently originated. And you can see, like my emotional life, it depends from what I've done and my history and my parents and my culture and my society, this body, everything isn't in that way. So then when we take this wrong ownership, I would say, of a thought or an emotion, that is thought. And that thought has a kind of sense of a self. And what you begin to see is that very sense of personality is a thought that comes and goes. I am great. I'm enlightened. I'm not enlightened. You shouldn't be that way. I shouldn't be that way. That's a thought that comes and goes. And that's the first aspect of beginning to unravel the whole sense of self. Is called Sakkaya Ditthi, or the sense of personality that I am this individual who has all these problems. And you can see there's just thought. And you start to play around with that. I'm really not getting anywhere in my practice. And you stop. and there's no person, there's awareness, I'm really doing well in my practice. But it's the same awareness. So you begin to identify that the self-thinking, the narrative thinking, is an object in awareness, and you no longer take refuge in thought. You take refuge in Buddha knowing Dharma. This is the Dharma of self-view. It feels this way. Some self-views are really, they fool you, don't they? You know, you have some difficulty in work or in family life, and a huge self-doubt comes up. Oh, I'm not getting it. Oh, I'm really hopeless, or guilt, or that's a thought. Now that thought is of course driven by strong emotional habits. So what we're trying to do in anatta teaching is that there is individuality. Individuality creates through cause and conditions a sense of self, but it can be known. And so maybe I feel guilt about something, and then now I no longer take the narrative of self. I feel guilt as Dharma. What is the Dharma of guilt? And it feels this way. Refuge in Buddha knowing Dharma. Guilt is anicca. Guilt begins to wash away from the mind, purified, and the sense of self associated with guilt also falls away. There's no narrative. There's no papancha. There's nothing to create around it. So more and more the sense of self, which is manifest through storylines and narratives, is no longer believed in. And that disbelieving is such a relief. Such a relief, you know? You don't have to fix it. You don't have to be perfect. You'll never be perfect. And that's such a nice feeling. You know, you walk away from a discussion, I should have said this, and I shouldn't have said that. Then I shouldn't have said, why did they say that? And say, well, that's just thought. Thought feels this way. Take refuge. So the refuge becomes a really, really beautiful, constant possibility. There is individuality. Individuality is dependently originated. It arises as emotions and histories. It can be known. It also can be attached to through thought. I am this and I am that. And anatta teaching is saying, don't believe the thoughts. Take refuge in Buddha knowing Dharma. All right?
Thank you, Luangpur. One more question from chat. What is stream entry? How is it related to the first three fetters?
Stream entry. Well, you just, you go down to the stream, dip your toes in the water. Okay, so that's the kind of Buddhist hang-up, I think. Stream entry, okay. So there are sort of descriptions of some of the obstacles we face in the spiritual life. And once we understand those obstacles, then our clarity is such that we are in the stream of Dharma rather than in the stream of ego or in the stream of samsara. And I don't know if you can even call it the stream of Dharma, because even the language kind of gets, anyway. So the first fetter and the first kind of consideration about that is what you just mentioned, Sakkaya Ditthi, what we call personality view. And that's the kind of gross storyline stuff, narrative stuff that our attention believes in. Now, when you start to see that the whole sense of personality is an object in awareness, thought, a proliferation driven by emotion, and you see that as an object, then you're seeing personality view as Dharma. When you don't see that as Dharma, but you believe in it, when we call that egotism or a sense of attachment to a sense of self, in many ways we talk about that. And I think all of us have seen that, where like you feel really uptight about something, maybe. You're kind of getting annoyed in your vaccine line or something like that. And then you notice, oh, annoyance feels this way. So someone like you're you're somewhere, there are no more lineups. I'm trying to do a lineup analogy, and there's no more lineups because no one goes anywhere because of COVID. But anyway, let's say 2 years ago, you're in your Costco lineup, and someone butts in front of you, and you feel disgruntled, right? How could they do that? Barbarians, don't they know that we queue, or something like that? and then you notice, so that's Sakkaya Ditthi, that's personality view. And then so disgruntled feels this way, annoyed feels this way. You can do something or not do something, but now you're taking, oh, this is the dharma of annoyance. You see that you're in the stream of dharma, you're not in the stream of ego, and all your self-perceptions that get driven by, we queue. We don't do this. So that's a kind of rough description of Sakkaya Ditthi. That's the first fetter. And I think you can see that, like, there's a difference between being angry and knowing anger, being really anxious and knowing anxiety. And the difference is the attachment to the narrative of self, in this case. Then the second fetter is Silabhata Paramasa, and that is usually translated as an attachment to beliefs and rites and rituals. So in a Western context, it's usually interpreted as superstition. Ajahn Sumedho takes it more deeply, and he says it's cultural attachments. It's cultural attachments. So a good example, I always give this one, it was such a neat one. We have we sew our own robes, and someone gave us a really beautiful Juki sewing machine. For those of you who sew your robes, it's a lovely sewing machine, and I needed some special needles for it, and we were in town for some teaching or something, so we went to a sewing shop, and there was a lady there with a hijab, Muslim woman, and I started talking with her, and she was the funniest person. She was just full of humor. And I realized that I thought that if you wear a hijab, you had no sense of humor. I was just kind of culturally conditioned, unbeknownst to me. And oh, she's really neat. She's really funny. And why not? Why wouldn't she be funny? And I could see, okay, that's what we mean by Silabhata Paramasa, cultural conditioning. And it's so like, it just, creeps into your mind. You don't even know it. So it was really fascinating to see that. And so like any, and that's why like in Buddhist teaching, we're saying that we have compassion for all beings, not just Theravada Buddhists who like me. or that truth is universal, or may all beings be free from suffering, and so on. And then when cultural conditioning comes up, which creates fear, which creates separation, which creates all the things that culture can do bad, because culture's good too. I mean, I'm a cultural being. I love culture in that sense. But all the things that it can mess us up with, fears and superstitions, that you could see could be a real hindrance, because you'd be caught as a sense of self in this cultural construct. So maybe if I expand that story, I could see that maybe, I felt that a Muslim woman was, basically whatever. I had some negative perception of her. And then I started to relate to her with that negative perception, and she relayed back to me like that. And I've created my own world of delusion and attachment to cultural biases. And that happens a lot, doesn't it? Happens a lot. Or techniques. Sometimes people, like when we began, many of us began meditation, we probably had some technique, and you hammer away at that technique and you're going to get enlightened. Good luck. That's a kind of superstition too. If I just keep walking slowly for the rest of my life, well, I'll never make it to lunch or the toilet. But anyway, I might get enlightened. But why? Why should that do anything? I'm just walking slowly. So sometimes just like a technique gets overly attached to, and doesn't have any reflective or contemplative quality to it. So that's the kind of, and obviously superstition that people might have. around whatever. But sometimes when the cultural things are sometimes harder to see. You say like, I'll notice, I get around with his outfits. It's really interesting, anthropological, to see how people relate to me or react to me. Some people relate and some people react. And you can see the ones that react are culturally conditioned to think that anyone who's wearing a brown bedsheet must be weird. which is sort of, you can understand that. I mean, I don't take it personally. But some are curious. Okay, so what are you about, mate? And they're interesting. They're quite interesting because they're not afraid. They're not afraid. So that's Siddhapata Paramasa. And then Vicikiccha is the third fetter, and that's doubt. And now doubt is also a kind of interesting one. And to me, that hindrance is around thought. Now, thought is a sankhara. It's a construct, right? So you can't think your way into nibbana, or you cannot think about the unconditioned. I mean, think about unconditioned. You can't, because thought is conditioned. So the pathway to this moksha, liberation, or peace cannot be through thinking. That's not possible, because thinking is an outward kind of movement, and thought itself is a sankhara. And when people don't understand that, and they have a high what is the word? It's like this overconfidence in what thought can do. Overconfidence, or even not even overconfidence. It's just like they're so habituated to analyzing everything that they think that all analysis will lead to conclusions, but they don't see that the questions condition conclusions, and conclusions condition more questions. They don't see that they're actually in a spin of thought. And so they'll ask a very profound question to them, profound. And then they'll think about it. What is it? What is it? What is it? I need to find the answer. I need to find the answer. There's the answer. But then, because the habit is to doubt, the doubt comes up. What is it? What is it? What is it? Someone gives an answer. Okay. What is it? What is it? What is it? What is it? And they're caught in samsara, in the samsara of thought. Doubt, answer, doubt, answer, doubt, answer. And that's not functional doubt. Functional doubt is like, what time is it? And when did we agree that the next meditation would be? I look at that. It's my doubt. Okay, that's functional doubt. If you didn't have that, you couldn't function. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the attachment to intellect and analysis. And so that's why you find sometimes people can be very, very clever in Buddhism. They can quote chapter verse of this, that, and the other, but they're really neurotic. What's that about? They're over-informed sometimes. They're hyper-informed. It's rare, I know, but you can see that, okay, the intellect has got all this information, but it's so overly heavy with thought and information that the capacity to be silent and witness and not comment and not analyze is not there. And so that type of person, quite often, you find in these gatherings, there'll be some question. There was one the other day about consciousness and self and so on. And I could see, well, the problem wasn't the question. It was the attachment to doubt. And the person had raised the question, got their minds in a spin, and then asked the question. I said, well, it's not the question. It's you don't know how to not know. Because knowing in terms of ideas, sometimes there's doubt and sometimes there's clarity and confidence, right? It's just the nature of duality. So the person that doesn't understand that then feels very uncomfortable with not knowing. But, and this is the difficulty of language, I know that I don't know. Or I can be silently aware of doubt as an object. When I'm silently aware of doubt as an object and I just bear with the unpleasantness of a doubting mind, then the desire ceases. I don't need an answer because there is no answer. It's like this. So liberation isn't a conclusion like ABC or It's not a conclusion, it's not a thought. It's not a thought. So those three, I mean, they take a lot of reflection and contemplation. Sometimes people think that like stream entry is like you just meditate furiously, and then your head blows open and you're in a stream. Well, maybe, but I haven't seen too many heads blown open around here. But this is obviously a more reflective sensitivity. Now, people will have profound experiences of emptiness, of anatta. They'll certainly have those in meditation and in their lives, and they can be really formative. But in most cases, it's not a kind of complete transformation. It's a kind of, well, there is something there. There's something different there that keeps them inquiring. But quite often, because Sakkaya Ditthi is very strong, personality is very strong, they then attach to that experience as mine. Now I've got it. Now I'm a stream enter, and then they've lost the plot. Totally. Because that personality is the construct that's been built up. And then they try to seek and then reformulate that experience, and then they're caught in desire. For years, maybe, for years. Whereas if you take it more like a reflective vehicle and you keep with the Four Noble Truths, then you see, yeah, okay, I get that. When I personality view, cultural attachments, doubt, intellect, thought, yeah, okay, if I put that down, there's silence. There's the silent awareness and refuge in Buddha knowing Dharma. So all these teachings, they mesh really beautifully. They really do. They really do. Once I think if you understand the basic model that I talked about, then they all fit in very, very nicely to that. All right?
Thank you, Luangpo. Do we have time for one more question?
Please.
So there's a question from Judy. Would you please unmute yourself, Judy? Thank you.
Hi, Judy.
There, I did it. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm trying to find you out here in Zoom land.
Am I making enough movement for you?
Oh, there you go. Okay, hi.
Hi.
In Toronto?
Pardon?
Still in Toronto?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I have been listening to you online and working with silent awareness. And I have been working with different entrances into silent awareness and really getting in there. And what I wanted to ask you, since I have this opportunity, is do you have any ideas of ways of helping to keep me in silent awareness? I found my entrances.
Right.
Okay, there. Oh, silent awareness. Now, do you have some ideas of how to stay there?
Good question. A very good question. Okay. Well, a lot of time spent in non-distraction, right? So obviously, when you have the facility to not fill the mind, that's very, very helpful. And modern culture is one that just gives you all these interesting objects to fill the mind. So there's much, like if I go for a walk down to the lake, I don't really fill the mind with lake perceptions. It's just something that actually nurtures presence. Whereas if I'm, online about something, that tends to agitate the mind or fill the mind with objects. So you want to look at what is it about the objective world that you need to do skillfully, that you enjoy doing skillfully, and what is it about the objective experiences that you have that grab your attention? What is it about your character that goes out into thought, say? Is it worry? You're an artist, correct? Right. So is it like a creative, there you go, there's a drawing. So is it like a creative project that you have, oh, I'll make this and I'll make that? That can be quite powerful. And so the mind is kind of enjoying creating, but then at some point the creation becomes boring. And then there's the attempt to get rid of the creation or that creating energy, but you've created the karma of that. You've created birth. So with birth, then you have to go through the old age cycle, is that your creative project is now boring. And this is something that happens with all of us. I do that with furniture all the time. Well, shut up, Viradhammo. Come on. And so as a project arises, that's the birth part of why we get reborn into noise. And then the birth part is where the renunciation takes place. So what, so I'm just saying, what is it about your mind that goes out into the objective world? What is skillful? And what is habitual and takes you away from that silence? So you understand that construct. And then how does that get born? How does that get born? And when do you then try to get rid of it? So if you're working with craving, right, then the beginning of something is exciting, birth. Oh yeah, this will be great. You know the American historian Barbara Tuchman. Have you ever read her? She's really good writer. Died long ago, but she had this lovely phrase about all these idiots that started wars. The conceit of a happy plan. Mm. And I think it was about Wilhelm or someone in the First World War. But it's such a good phrase, the conceit of a happy plan. If I make this, it's going to be great. I'm going to be so happy. And then you're in it, and then you're in the complexity. And then, creativity is like that. You have to go through the complexity and the boredom to create something of value. That's fine. But in terms of your question, what is it that draws you out? How can you awaken to that? And when you're in the out, as it were, don't reject it. Look at the craving to get rid of, right? So the craving to get rid of just exacerbates it. So I always work with the Four Noble Truths in that sense. So what do I want? I want the silence. Okay, look at the wanting rather than try to get the silence. If you try to get the silence, you're still out looking for an object. But if you look at the wanting, you're with the heart and you observe it, and then it takes care of itself.
Oh.
Sound like a doer?
Gonna try it.
Yeah, okay. Send me, your homework will be looked at next week.
I'll send you all the drawings I did of you while you were doing your Dhamma talk.
Okay, just send me the nice ones.
Thank you.